Remedy are one of the most creative and expressive developers out there right now, so when they announced that they were delving into the PvE multiplayer shooter scene, I had to be there day one. I've now played a lot of FBC Firebreak, I've been in each mission multiple times, as you kinda have to, and I've experimented with all the different loadouts, etc, and this game absolutely sucks. For a multitude of reasons, so that's what we'll be discussing today. But before we get into that, if you do end up enjoying the video, then please consider subscribing, as we are trying to reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But enough of that nonsense, let's first talk about the onboarding. Or a complete lack thereof, because this is where FBC Firebreak immediately shoots itself in the foot. Before you start the game, there is no cinematic, no setup, not even a basic tutorial really. You're just dumped into a mission with zero context, no explanation of who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. No breakdown of the game's systems, which by the way could actually be quite cool, but we'll get onto that later on. What Firebreak seems to expect is that you will just figure things out as you go along, which is fine as a sort of philosophy. But the game gives you absolutely nothing to work with. You don't know how to use your kit, you don't know how fire spreads, or how to deal with it effectively, you don't know how the elemental systems interact, you're just running around aimlessly whilst everything is burning around you. And this isn't a gentle warm-up either. You're dropped into a mission that is frankly a terrible introduction. It's short, it's about 5 minutes long max, and the entire thing is basically just repairing fans and randomly being on fire. You haven't had time to understand the tools available to you, so you'll often find yourself catching fire without knowing why, or failing objectives without really knowing what went wrong. I do think that the mission they chose to be the first mission is absolutely dreadful, and I think they would have been much better served to have used the second mission with all the sticky notes instead. It's incredibly discouraging. It's like the game is daring you to keep playing, and for a lot of people, they probably won't, especially since there's no real incentive to push through. There's no story hook, there's no motivation, there's no moment of, oh, okay, now I get it. Just a short chaotic mess for 5 minutes, and then a mission summary screen asking you to do it all over again. And to make matters worse, this botched introduction also ruins what could have been one of the more interesting parts of the game, the elemental kits. You can combine water, electricity and repair mechanics in some genuinely cool ways, but the game never teaches you how. It doesn't even hint at the potential. So instead of encouraging experimentation, it leaves most of you just fumbling around with your underexplained tools, wondering if you're missing something. And you are, but not through any fault of your own, because the game never told you them in the first place. The game also doesn't even have any form of chat. A PvE game that doesn't have voice chat. What on earth are we doing here? That is an essential feature for a game like this. It's one of the worst onboarding experiences that I have seen in a modern game, not because it's hard, because it really isn't at the start, but because it's just so unwelcoming. There is zero introduction to the world, the systems, or what you're even doing. You're just thrown in, given 5 minutes of confusion, and then you're told to go again. I can see a large amount of players loading the game on PS Plus or Game Pass, which is where I feel the majority of this game's player base will come from, playing the first mission and then just leaving, which is a shame. Because as much as I'm going to criticise this game, it does get better. Let's now dig into the structure of FBC Firebreak, because this is where the game really collapses in on itself. There are only 5 missions in total, just 5. That is your whole game, and instead of giving you access to those missions in full, Firebreak pulls one of the most baffling design choices that it possibly could have done. Your first time through each mission is basically just a 5-minute demo. You don't get the full level. You get a slice, a teaser, and then it's over. That is not a design philosophy, that is content rationing. To unlock the rest of the mission, you have to replay it slightly harder, over and over again. Each time you finish a level, you will level up that mission, and doing so extends its length slightly, unlocking more rooms, sometimes more objectives, and eventually, what might resemble a complete level. What's most annoying is that when you do end up playing what feels like a complete level, it's actually quite cool. You might find an interesting boss that requires some teamwork, but why do you have to grind to unlock the actual levels? Now, in theory, you can argue this is about replayability, keep players coming back, drip feed the content, build up mastery over time, but in practice, it's a needless grind, it's padding, and it is incredibly frustrating. The worst part is that it completely destroys the pacing. Imagine watching the first 5 minutes of 5 different movies. and then being told, great, now go and watch the next 5 minutes of each different movie, and then keep doing that until you've finished them all. Maybe, if you do it enough times, we will show you the whole movie. That is what FBC Firebreak is doing. For a player booting this up for the first time, it feels cheap. It feels like you're playing a demo inside a game you have already paid for. There is no sense of progression, no momentum, no investment, and because the missions are so short at first, nothing really has time to land. There is zero atmosphere, zero build-up, and very little variety in objectives. You just get tossed in, you do a task, and then it ends. Then you do it again, and you add an extra room, where you will do the same thing again but with more enemies this time. Then you will finish that level, and eventually you'll find a unique objective and the game does get more interesting. Other games may use similar mechanics, I'm not sure. I'm not going to pretend that I've played hundreds of games like this, but they cannot be as watered down as this one. I refuse to believe that this subgenre exists if so. It's especially insulting in a game with so little content to begin with that there are 5 missions, there are 6 guns, and 3 kits. It's already a thin package, so why stretch it even thinner by forcing you to grind for access to content that should have been part of the base experience? And let's be real here, if you're not hooked from your first experience with a mission, why would you want to replay it? Firebreak assumes that you will be excited to rerun these levels endlessly, just to see what was deliberately hidden from you the first time. But the problem is, the first impressions are too short and too shallow to generate that kind of interest in the first place. But what about the actual objectives themselves, the things you're actually doing? Surely they are interesting, because on paper FBC Firebreak has one of the coolest possible settings. The oldest house from Control is a great backdrop. It should be the perfect playground for strange firefighting missions. But then you actually play the levels and all that potential just evaporates. Despite being set in one of the most fascinating environments in modern gaming, the objectives are completely uninspired. You're sent into this otherworldly architecture just to fix this, move that, escort this, put that here. I think it says a lot when the coolest one is destroying sticky notes. It's the kind of checklist busywork you would expect from a bland procedural game, not a weird supernatural shooter from Remedy. This would already be disappointing if you only had to do each level once, but remember, you don't. You have to run the same level multiple times just to unlock more of it. And because the early versions of each mission are so short, again, we're talking 5 minutes here, you'll be doing the same dull task 3, 4, 5, even 6 times. It ends up feeling like procedural filler stuffed into a handcrafted space. And the really maddening thing is that you can actually see the potential. You can see how good this could have been if they'd taken the time to craft compelling, weird missions that actually made use of the oldest house setting. Even the unique settings can't save it. The atmosphere might still be there if you really want to immerse yourself, but the atmosphere alone isn't enough to carry a level. This should have been a surreal firefighting nightmare. Instead, it is a dull objective-based loop that completely wastes its setting. By this point, I could honestly tolerate the tedious mission structure and the dull objectives if the core gunplay really delivered, if the weapons really felt incredible to use. That kind of moment-to-moment satisfaction might have been enough to keep the rest of the game afloat. But it doesn't. FBC Firebreak's gunplay is functional, but it never goes beyond that. It never feels exciting, it doesn't feel powerful at all, it just exists. There are only 6 guns in total, a number that is already way too low for a game that's asking you to grind the same missions over and over again. Very few upgrades change how the guns feel, nothing that adds any real long-term interest or desire to progress. Once you've used the gun, you've used the gun. You also get 3 kits, each one built around an elemental theme. One lets you repair things faster, one uses electricity, and one is water-based. And to the game's credit, these kits do interact with each other in some interesting ways. You can dampen enemies with water, and then you can electrify them afterwards. The problem is that this synergy is rarely necessary. The game almost never demands it. You can brute force nearly every mission with basic shooting and occasional repairs. On top of that, the game makes zero effort to explain how these elemental interactions work. It's a system with genuine potential that the game seems almost ashamed to admit it has. And when it comes to actually firing these guns, it just doesn't feel great. There's very little sense of weight to any of the shots, there's no sense of impact when an enemy is hit, there's barely any visual feedback, everything feels so soft. It's not broken, but it's extremely unsatisfying. Despite how it may seem, based off this video alone, I actually don't like being negative about games. If you go through my channel, you'll see I'm a generally positive guy, but I still have to call a spade a spade. FBC Firebreak is a major disappointment. Don't get me wrong, the game works, it runs well. I had pretty much zero technical issues, so props to Remedy for that, but on a foundational level the game just isn't fun. It's much more simple than pretty much any other game in its genre, it's hilariously light on content, hides the good content behind grinding, gives you almost no weapons, and refuses to explain itself in the first place. I wanted to enjoy FBC Firebreak, but unfortunately the game just didn't let me. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, as it really does help. And if you want to see more videos from me, then please make sure to subscribe. As I mentioned at the start, we are trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But for now, that is all. I upload at least one video a week. Have a nice day, and goodbye.